I had never intended to return to Black Hollow. It was a place spoken of in our family with the kind of caution usually reserved for infectious disease or ancient debts. My grandfather, from whom I inherited both the house and the responsibility, had refused to speak of it during his lifetime. Only once, when I was 12 and asked directly, did he respond, his expression darkening like a thunderhead. "There are places where things live longer than they should," he said, voice low and eyes distant. "Black Hollow is one of them." Years passed, and like most warnings from childhood, his words faded into a kind of myth. I moved to the city, took up work as a bookseller, and thought nothing of the place. Then, the letter arrived. It was not in my grandfather's hand. It could not have been, for he had been dead 3 years. But the envelope was sealed with his old family crest, a crow clutching a bell. The note inside was brief. "You must come. The bell rings again." There was no return address, but the postmark was unmistakable. Ballymurrow, close to the Hollow. I would not have gone if not for the mention of the bell. There is an old family legend about it, that it rings only when one of our blood dies, or worse, returns. So I packed a small bag, locked the shop, and boarded a train west. Black Hollow lies in a shallow valley, wrapped in thick woods and the smell of peat. The trees are always damp, no matter the season. It is the kind of place where moss grows over road signs, and the wind seems to whisper in a tongue just shy of understanding. The cottage was still there, crouching like a half-forgotten beast at the bottom of the lane. Ivy had clawed its way across the stone walls, and the thatch roof sagged in the middle. But the door was intact, and the key, old iron with a handle shaped like a curled snake, still fit. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Dust lay thick over the furniture, but nothing had been touched. No signs of forced entry, no footprints. Yet on the mantel, someone had placed a single black feather. And then I heard it. A bell, distant but clear, ringing 3 times from somewhere in the woods. The fire took hours to coax into life, the damp wood hissing like an animal in pain. I sat in my grandfather's old chair, the leather cracked, the stuffing exposed at one arm, and waited for the warmth to seep in. It never did. The house was colder than I remembered, not the kind of cold that drafts in from under doors or cracks in the stone. No, this chill clung to the bones. It settled in the lungs and made you cough if you breathed too deeply. I found the old family records in a chest beneath the floorboards. They were wrapped in oilcloth and bound in red twine, sealed with more of the crow and bell insignia. Yellowed paper, handwritten in curling ink, generations of names, births, deaths, and the dates the bell had rung. It was always the bell, the same words repeated like a liturgy. The bell rings for blood and bone, 3 times for loss, 7 for return, 9 for debt unpaid. My finger stopped at my father's name. Isaac Marin died in 1989, the year I turned 7. Next to his name, 3 rings, and beside my grandfather's, Edwin Marin, 7, 7, return. But I buried him myself. Didn't I? That night I dreamt of the woods, of trees too tall, too old, bending unnaturally toward the ground as if straining to hear. Something moved among them, too fast to be seen, only felt. A pressure in the chest, a fluttering in the blood. It circled and circled until a bell rang out close, shrill metal against bone. I woke before the 3rd chime, and there just outside the window a shape stood watching. Human perhaps, but still, too still. I did not sleep again. By morning I had convinced myself it was the dream that frightened me, not the watcher. Dreams often carry fragments of half-buried memories, and the hollow is nothing if not a grave for such things. Still, I kept the poker beside me as I explored the rest of the house. The back room, once my grandfather's study, was unchanged. Books crowding every shelf, some so old the titles had vanished. One in particular caught my eye, Annals of the Hollow Families. I opened it, expecting more genealogies, but the pages had been hollowed out. Inside were letters, dozens of them. They were all addressed to me. Each was signed M. They will not let me rest. I did what I had to do. When the bell rings 9 times, you must run. Burn the house. Salt the ground. I saw your father last week. He hasn't aged. He still wears the same coat. But his eyes, they're all wrong. They're trying to come back. All of them, the hollow remembers. I found the bell path by accident, or rather it found me. The woods behind the cottage are thick, ancient, untouched by axe or saw. The air beneath the canopy is heavy, damp, and strangely quiet. No bird song, no wind, only the distant creak of trees shifting in their sleep. I had followed the feather trail, small, black crow feathers leading deeper and deeper, until the trees thinned and a narrow path of white stones emerged from the underbrush. No plants grew along it. The stones were smooth, bleached, and warm to the touch. I realized too late they were not stones at all. They were bones, some animal, some not. At the path's end stood a bell tower, not tall but ancient, formed from timber bound in rusted iron, half swallowed by ivy. And in the center hung the bell, black as night, silent. I should have turned back, but something in me ached. A kind of memory not my own, the need to listen, and that's when I heard the whisper. Just two more. The words clawed at my mind. Back at the cottage, I searched the study again. This time, behind the fireplace, I found a hidden compartment. Inside a single book, my grandfather's diary. Most entries were dull, weather, crops, repairs, but further in, the tone shifted. The handwriting grew erratic, desperate. The bell is a mouth, the hollow its throat. We are the echo. I buried your father, but he did not stay buried. Saw him at the window last winter, smiling with teeth too long. I rang it once, only once, for her. I had to. They promised she'd come back. She did. She was wrong. Then one final entry. The boy is the last. If the line ends, the hollow sleeps. But if he returns, if he hears the 9th toll. The rest of the page was scorched black. That night someone knocked on the door 3 times. I did not move. I waited. The knocking came again, slow, deliberate, and then his voice, my father's voice.
Son, it's cold out here. Let me in.
I wanted to. God's help me, I wanted to. I remembered his hands, the way he'd lift me to his shoulders, his laugh. I remembered him teaching me to fish in the river just beyond the hollow's edge. But he'd been dead for 30 years. I gripped the poker until my knuckles burned. Then, slowly, I crossed the room and looked through the peephole. He was there. He looked mostly right. Same coat, different eyes, but his mouth didn't move with the words. He was smiling, too wide, and the skin around his eyes was cracked, as though the face was no longer his to wear. I did not open the door. He didn't leave. He just stood there smiling until dawn. The day after my father's return, or whatever wore his skin, I woke to silence. No birds, no wind. Even the trees seemed afraid to move. But it wasn't until I saw the mark on my arm that I truly understood. The hollow had touched me. It was faint at first. A small black ring on my wrist, like soot rubbed into the skin. But when I tried to wash it, it burned, sharp and deep, like acid through marrow. I remembered a phrase from my grandfather's journal. The mark appears before the claim. The bone path had lengthened. What once was a short walk now twisted through parts of the forest I didn't recognize. The trees leaned closer. Some bled dark sap that smelled of copper and rot. I counted each step aloud, as though afraid I might lose myself. At the tower, the bell was no longer still. It swung gently in the windless air, giving off the faintest hum, as though something behind it was breathing. That's when I saw the carving. It had not been there before. Along the base of the tower, freshly etched into the wood, was a name, mine, and beneath it, a phrase in Latin I barely remembered from school. I whispered the translation aloud. He who rings the 9th toll must choose blood or soil. I didn't understand then, but I would. The dreams grew worse, no longer just shadows and trees. I saw my ancestors, their faces flickering like candlelight in pitch dark. Some I recognized from portraits, others from photographs, but not all had human eyes. They stood in a circle in the woods, robes heavy with soil, chanting in a tongue older than English. In the center, a child cried, its voice familiar. It was me. They had offered me once before. I woke with a scream on my lips and soil beneath my fingernails. I went back to the family records, digging deeper than before. Hidden behind false boards in the attic was a single page, thick parchment, sealed in wax. The original pact. To the hollow we give of flesh, of bone, of blood, that the line may be preserved, that we may pass through the veil and live again. One shall ring, one shall open, one shall remain. There was a signature at the bottom, Thaddeus Marin, and beside it drawn in old, dried blood, the crow with the bell. My entire bloodline had been feeding this place, keeping the gate ajar. Every time one of us died, the bell rang, not as warning, but as permission. And now, the last bell was mine to ring. 9 tolls, 9 voices, 9 shadows waiting in the hollow to wear my skin and walk once more. Unless I found the axe behind the fireplace, my grandfather's, still sharp. If the bell was the gate, perhaps I could still close it. Outside in the hollow, a terrific storm raged for 2 days straight. I didn't leave the false sanctuary offered by the cottage, sanctuary, or prison. The shadows moved strangely. Time slipped. I would blink and the fire would be ash. I'd turn a page in the diary and find it blank until midnight. Then the ink would rise like bruises in the dark. They were drawing closer. Each night more of them gathered outside the cottage. I dared not open the door, but through cracks in the shutters I saw them, figures in old clothing. My bloodline made flesh once more. Men and women from portraits long buried. My grandmother in her wedding veil. My Uncle Thomas, who vanished in the hollow at age 15. The same blank, twisted expression stretched through time itself. They stood in silence. They did not knock. They waited. On the 3rd night, I heard them speak for the first time.
The blood returns.
The blood returns. The gate opens. The hollow remembers.
The hollow remembers.
And then the bell rang. Not faint, not distant. Close. Louder than I'd ever heard it. 8 tolls. 1 remained. I ran. The cottage no longer felt like shelter. It pulsed like a throat ready to swallow. The woods closed in behind me, but I knew the path now. The bones gleamed like candles. When I reached the tower, the bell no longer swung gently. It convulsed. With each sway, the wood groaned and splintered. The iron braces screeched. The air was thick with the scent of lightning. The forest itself seemed to lean in. hungry, and at the base of the bell tower stood a woman. She wore my mother's face. "Love," she said, in the voice I remembered from lullabies, but her eyes were empty pits. Behind her, more shapes gathered in the trees, watching, waiting. I stepped forward. The axe was in my hand. The wind died as I stepped onto the bone path. Behind me, the woods, black and silent. Before me, the tower and the bell and the assembled dead. They lined the forest edge in solemn rows, my family, or what remained of them. Pale skin stretched too tightly over bones, lips sewn into smiles, eyes hollowed out and gleaming with something older than memory. Some I knew by name, others I only recognized from the paintings, their frames still rotting in the attic. They watched, but they did not move. Not yet. The woman who wore my mother's face raised one hand, a gesture of welcome or command. "You came," she whispered. "The last Merrin, the gatekeeper, the bellwether." The bell's surface shimmered like oil, warping the air around it. It no longer looked like iron, it looked alive. It pulsed like a heart, and with every beat a voice whispered in my mind, "Ring, ring, ring, ring." The axe felt heavy in my hands. "Why?" I asked. "Why come back?" The thing in my mother's skin tilted its head, and for a moment I saw it, the true shape behind her eyes, a thing of smoke and roots, a hunger-given form. "To finish what was promised," she said. "You were given to us long ago. Blood owed is blood due. Ring the bell and let the hollow feed. And if I don't," something like a smile cracked across her face, ear to ear, "then you remain, as we did, between." I looked down at the base of the bell tower. My name, etched in the wood, had changed. Ringer, gatekeeper, vessel. My fingers twitched. I could feel the 9th toll waiting in my bones. I stepped forward, lifted the axe. They leaned in. The first swing missed. The second hit true. The bell shrieked, not a sound, but a sensation like fire in the marrow. The revenants screamed in unison, mouths wide, no breath behind them. The forest howled. I brought the axe down again, and again. The tower cracked, the bell split. A sound like thunder shattered the air. The light in the trees died. And then silence. The kind of silence you hear when a heartbeat stops. I don't know how long I lay in the dirt. When I woke, the sun had risen. The bell tower was gone, nothing left but splinters and ash. The path of bones had crumbled into dust. The forest was quiet, peaceful, no figures in the trees, no eyes watching. I limped back to the cottage. It was empty, just a house now. No whispers in the walls, no cold in the bones. The mark on my wrist had faded. The old papers burned easily in the hearth. And for the first time in my life, I slept without dreaming. I went back to the city but never forgot my time at the Hollow. I only returned to the cottage once, briefly, several years later. I sold the house in the spring of that year, cheap for its size. Needed work, the agent said, but nothing that couldn't be fixed with elbow grease and a fresh coat of paint. The Hollow had grown thick. Trees stood where paths used to be. The woods had swallowed everything except the house. It stood untouched, still watching, waiting. The new owners were a young family, Tom and Eliza Withers and their daughter Daisy. Nice couple, over from England for a clean start, they said. They asked about the neighbours. I told them there wasn't any. They weren't superstitious. They didn't know the name Merrin. And when the child found the bell clapper buried in the garden, small, black, still warm to the touch, they didn't ask where it came from. Daisy held it in her hand like it was meant for her. "It hums," she said to her mother that night. "It talks when I close my eyes." They laughed. Children have imaginations. She's always been dreamy, that one, but dreams in the Hollow are doors. Weeks passed. Things moved in the house, small at first. A clock running backwards. A photo frame turned the wrong way. Black feathers on the windowsill. Daisy began waking up with soil under her fingernails. Tom started hearing knocking at night. Not at the door, inside the walls. Eliza saw someone watching from the tree line, someone who looked just like her mother, but her mother had been dead for years. They planned to move, but every time they tried, the car wouldn't start. The phones wouldn't work. The road seemed to bend back toward the cottage. One night, Daisy was found standing at the tree line, eyes wide, bell clapper in hand. "They said the tower's coming back," she whispered. "They just need one more." They say no one has lived in the hollow for generations. The forest's grown thick where the path used to be, but sometimes on cold nights you can still hear the sound of a bell ringing deep among the trees. Just once, a memory or a warning. Some things don't come back. Some things never left.